Nile TV International brings you analysis of important stories from different angles. Everywhere, every challenge, every hero, every change. Let's start the conversation on the daily debate. I'm Taghreed Hussein on the Debate Thursdays, bringing you news analysis you want to watch. Welcome to Thursday Debate here on Nile TV International. Before we start our episode, it gives us a great pleasure, and on behalf of Nile TV International, to extend our warm wishes and a big salute to the Egyptian armed forces, our courageous armed forces, on the occasion of October War Victory. October is the month of celebrations in Egypt, celebrating this victory throughout the whole month with all the memories, with all the sense of pride that it brings in us all, with all those feelings of pride that we have for achieving such a great victory that had changed the face of history at large. Today, while celebrating the 6th of October war victory, we'll be talking about a very interesting topic about how did October victory reach out to the whole world. Definitely through a tool, namely translation, which is communication. This communication tool, which is very important and very efficient while celebrating the International Day for Translators and Translation. This is the communication tool that made the whole world understand in different languages how Egyptians have been able to achieve this great victory in October War. And we're really honored to have with us Professor Dr. Ahmad Abdel Tawwab, the Assistant Professor at Menoufiya University, Professor of Linguistics. So he himself is a translator and a simultaneous interpreter, right? Hello, right. Dr. Ahmad.
Well, thank you, Taghreed, for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Pleasure, Dr. Ahmad. And I guess this time the topic is very much co-relevant. Right. Since as simultaneous interpreters, both of us know quite well how translation is important, how it is a key of communication, not only between individuals, but also sending messages throughout the nations, throughout the whole world. Protocols need translators. Also peace treaties need the efficient, professional translators. And a sense of communication among world leaders need also very efficient translators as well. So translation as a communication bridge is a very important tool that we are discussing, and its co-relevance to the spirit of October. How did translation manage to let the message reach everyone around the world? Definitely October War Victory is a war that has been taught at the military academies all over the world in different languages. And here comes again the important role of this communication tool, the important communication tool. Translation, Dr. Ahmed, and let me say happy International Day for Translators and Translation. With October War Victory, it has been through translation that the whole world would know what has happened in October.
Right, absolutely, Tagreed. You are absolutely right about that. And what a coincidence that two important events that we have here in our country today. We have 6th of October war anniversary. I guess that this is the 47th anniversary from one hand. And then we are also celebrating, as you said, that we are translators. So we are celebrating the International Universal Day of Translation as well. But let me, Tagreed, before we start talking in detail about our topic today, let me just send a big salute to our military. And let me also send a congratulation message for every Egyptian inside our country and outside the country living abroad. October, the war in 1973, it was a great, great lesson. And I think that we have a tremendously magnificent lesson that all of us should learn from. It is by hard working, by patience, by having determination, and by having persistence, Egyptians can get their target. And this is what we are witnessing nowadays. Before coming here, I was just thinking about how can we find, as you said, a correlation between both sides. 1973 war and what we are witnessing today in 2020. The time difference here, it's all about 47 years. We have common grounds between both sides. We have similarities when it comes to the challenges that we have.
Yes, and also through the important battle, Egypt's battle to achieve development and to achieve prosperity, and to provide the sense of upgrading the potential of the human being, because His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is putting the life of Egyptians and a better quality of life for Egyptians in the forefront. So doing so, we have the spirit of October. It is this sense of belief. In October, there was this sense of belief in our potential to achieve victory, that we can be victorious, and it happened. And today we have also the sense of belief, the belief in the Egyptians' will. And they are always supporting their leader. They are always supporting their dreams. To let them happen and make them happen on solid grounds.
Remember, Tagreed, during the time in 1973, most military experts around the world, they were saying that any sort of victory is impossible. But Egyptians did that. They did the victory at the end. They made the crossing in 1973. Now, we are talking about the crossing of the Suez Canal at that time, and today we are making a new crossing to the future. We've been talking about digitalized world, comprehensive development, changing the syllabi, talking about the universities, and we're going to talk about that in detail today. But let me just tell you, if you just have a close-up picture, you can just see that there is a similarity between both sides. In 1973, there was a crossing, and today we have a crossing. But as you said very interesting statement now. You said that most Egyptians, they stand behind their leadership. That's very true. And remember that in 1973, again, Egyptians were unified. They were standing on a unified stand. And today, we are doing in the same way because we are facing the same challenge. The problem that we have today, probably, Tagreed, is something that is, we have, and as you are following the news, the COVID-19 and all of such challenges. But also there is something that I think it's very critical to talk about. It is the awareness and the mentality and the mindset of Egyptians as well. This is what I believe in. We were talking about crossing, we were talking about planning, but let me tell you also something very, very interesting when it comes to the victory in 1973 and our topic today, which is translation. That is knowledge. So 1973, it was, I think that Egyptians were gaining knowledge. They were making a good plan. They have a good and a systematic mechanism in order to make the job done. And today, we also have the same mindset. We are hungry for knowledge. Look to what's happening today, that every single aspect in our country is a change to be digitalized. So we have already, and just a few days ago, I heard the Prime Minister talking about that Egypt is witnessing the economy of knowledge. So that is a new expression. We are talking about similarities between both sides, and now it comes the translation. We've been talking about translation and interpreting around the corner. But the interesting part here that United Nations consider translation, it's not a way just of communication. It's not a way of conveying meanings or changing or transferring from one language into another language. but it's considered as a strategic device for civilization and for the process of comprehensive development. This is what we have to look at, which is translation. It's not just a job, it's not just a skill, but it's also a strategic way for development.
A strategic way for development, and it was also during October Victory a very important and a strategic tool in order to convey to the whole world the message and also the spirit of October, how Egyptians had managed to achieve victory. The whole world was the attention of the whole world, and the main headlines of the world came all portraying Egypt's victory in 1973.
I think that really comes here when it comes to the way of translation. Translation plays an important role here in reflecting the real image. Just the other day, I was reading a book published in English by Dr. Abul Ghaid, the former Foreign Affairs Minister, and he published a book about, it's entitled Peace, War, October War, and Beyond. The book was published in English language, and it's already distributed nowadays in Western circles. This is quite a bit interesting, and I guess that this is what we really need. That we would like to make more and more publications in English just to make the world be aware for such victory that happened. It was a dramatic change that happened. Remember that at that time, most military experts in the world, they were saying it's impossible for Egyptians to do or to take any action. But we proved the opposite. And that happened, again, by having training, by having planning, good planning as well, and by having, as you said at the beginning, a strong will that can make something happen on the ground.
Yes, definitely a strong belief, and this is what is very important. Translation has played a very important role in also documenting the truth, because it is a very strong and powerful tool if we're talking documentation. And since we are in the digital age, digitization is going definitely to affect and have an effect on the different specialities. And translation is considered to be one of them. What it took to achieve this victory has been transcending barriers through the tool, namely that important communication tool, namely translation. So translation and digitization.
Right. There is a strong connection between both. Today, we are witnessing another challenge. As you know, Tagri, that we have a lot of applications based on artificial intelligence programs, which means that some people probably claim that translators' role will be diminished in the future. We're going to have machine translation. And by the way, this is an expanding program nowadays when it comes to the field of translation. But again, and that's my humble opinion, I think that it's very, very hard to focus completely on the machine and neglect the human factor. As I said, because when it comes to translation, it's not a job, but it's more like a skill.
Flesh and blood.
Right, so this is what we really need. And the interesting part about translation, it's involved in every single aspect in our life. So we have, for example, when it comes to the social factors, the cultural factors, the scientific elements, you're going to see translation in every aspect. If we would like to make any kind of progress or any kind of development, we wouldn't do that without having another language.
Yes.
If we would like to tell the world what we are doing, and I guess that this is what we are trying to do nowadays, is to send the messages to every country outside the world, it happens by having translation. So it's not just the way of communicating, but it's more than that. It's a mirror that reflects who we are.
Definitely, it is a mirror reflecting who we are. And here in Egypt, our treasure are also the youth. The youth are also today playing a very important role and also delving in the political life in this country. They are being trained to be able to take decisions and also to be in leadership positions. And this has been through the important role that is played by the National Training Academy in that respect. We're always talking, Professor Ahmad, about the spirit of October and how to instill in the youth this sense of belonging to their homeland, their love for this country. leadership programs also for the youth are very important in that respect.
Right. I think that, as you said, Tagreed, now that this is very critical word, the youth and the youngsters. There is something here that I read about, which is certain initiatives to increase the awareness of the youth. This is very, very critical point. It's all about the awareness. The question here that I have in my mind, how can we change, or how can we develop, or how can we create, or how can we formulate the awareness for the youth? This is the question that I always ask myself. And I think one of the major ways is such events that we are just remembering. Our important anniversary nowadays, October 6th war, this is very critical. It helps in making people be aware for what's going on in the world
today. They
today.
didn't live the war, however, they can listen to experts.
Right.
And there are always lessons taught from October victory to the youth. How, when there was a will, there was a way. There was a victory that has been definitely transcending barriers and that changed the face of history.
That's absolutely right. And as we mentioned before, history plays an important role if you'd like to understand.
And role models as well.
And the role models.
See how our great patriotic armed forces and our soldiers did, though, you know, the equipment, they surpassed everything and they managed to achieve victory for the nation.
That's absolutely right. And again, so the bottom line here is it happens by translation. And that's why when I was just thinking about that, United Nations considered that September 30th will be as International Day of Translation. That indicates for something very, very significant. It helps.
That they are themselves aware of the important role of translation as a communication tool that can change a lot in the world today.
That's absolutely right. Remember that every war and any sort of dispute or conflict, it happens because there is miscommunication. In my last article that I published about the Universal Day of Translation, I was talking about the clash that happened between the Japanese government and the US administration in the Second World War. It happened because there was mistranslated word. Just one word changed the whole event during that time. That was in the 40s of the last century, during the time of the Second World War. So because of translation, because of the translating certain words in a wrong way, it
and
caused
also
a disaster.
in the stipulations of certain treaties. That's why in treaties you have very efficient legal personalities, and at the same time you have very efficient and professional translators.
Right. And you know that I'm more involved in the field of linguistics, applied linguistics and translation. We always say in the field of linguistics that any change for the meaning of any word will lead to a change in the real life. So that means that if you change the meaning of one word, it could change the whole world. And there is something very critical here, that if you control the language, if you control the way of how to formulate your language and your sentences and your ideas,
the context
and the content as well, you can change everything in your life on the ground. It's just by using language and just by making translation.
Definitely. You have lots of jobs, you know, done. You can direct even people also in leadership. When we learn leadership skills, we know that there are certain terms that would work and other synonyms won't. So definitely being translators know that it is the magic of the word that matters, and where to put which word in which context, how to deliver the message is very important. Well, talking about the importance of translation and transcending barriers, and talking Egypt's soft power and Egypt's culture, translation has played a very important role in the cultural aspect. Look at Naguib Mahfouz, that great Nobel laureate, and how his books, when it was sold abroad, and they knew more about his personality, about the Arab literature through translation.
You know, Tagreed, and you said very critical word here, it is the soft power of Egypt. We have to remember that we have today the college, it's called in Arabic, the College of Al-Alsun. That means the College of Languages. But believe it or not, that it was built probably during the 40s or the 50s of the 19th century, during the era of Muhammad Ali at that time. So Egypt was a pioneering in the field of translation. That was like more than a century ago. So when Rafa Tahtawi, he was the pioneering figure at that time in translation, and the college was built at that time. And since that time until today, there is a progress happening. I know that sometimes it's not up to our expectations, or sometimes it doesn't meet our ambitious plans, but at least that there is something happening on the ground. Just the other day, I was reading the news coming from the National Council of Translation. There is a specialized council in Egypt here that is affiliated with every single aspect related to translation. This is a huge step. I know that we need more, but at least that there is a step happening on the ground that can lead to a full progress at the end.
Definitely many steps are happening on the ground, and we're always recalling that great spirit of October, because the spirit of October was magic. It was this sense of perseverance, this sense of will of Egyptians to achieve victory. They were behind their courageous armed forces to achieve the main noble aim, which is to achieve victory, to regain back our land, to regain back our dignity, and regain back our sense of pride. His Excellency, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, is keen always to address the nation during 6th of October celebrations. His Excellency praises the armed forces, the shield of the nation, and recalls back how October victory has regained our dignity and our pride.
لقد كان الليل طويلا وثقيلا، ولكن الأمة لم تفقد إيمانها أبدا بطلوع الفجر. ونحن مرفوعة هامات مرتفعة راياتنا، ولكن علينا أن نعرف أن المهمة لم تنتهي بعد. إلى الأمام.
وإذا كان الجيش المصري قدر يعملها مرة، فهو هيبقى قادر يعملها كل مرة.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi addressed the nation on the occasion of the 47th anniversary of the glorious October War victory. In his address speech, the president said that the great victory taught us that the Egyptian nation is always able to stand up for its rights and earn considerable respect from others. He added that the glorious October War was not just a military battle in which Egypt fought and achieved its greatest victory. It was a real test of the Egyptian people's ability to make the dream come true. El-Sisi said that Egypt's achievements over the years to maintain security and stability have been remarkable and are all well known around the world, particularly as it lies in a difficult region and unstable world. He stressed that this is evidence of the Egyptian people's uniqueness and solidarity and reflects the ability of the armed forces and state institutions to undertake such a mission. On the anniversary of the Great October Victory, the President paid homage to the martyrs and heroes of the armed forces for leaving to us a free homeland that is under national sovereignty and does not accept submission or degradation. During his speech, El-Sisi paid tribute to both late President Anwar al-Sadat and to all mothers who instilled in their children a firm belief that their territories could not be compromised. He also paid tribute to martyrs who sacrificed their lives for the country and to the armed forces and police personnel who are still carrying out their work to protect the security and stability of Egypt. The Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces affirmed that the Egyptian army and its brave men are determined to carry on the path, protect the territory, and preserve the dignity of the people, which is tied to its national army via a covenant, a pledge, and a bond that can never be broken. Later, the head of state said that the courageous men of the armed forces are determined to continue protecting the nation's territory and preserving the dignity of the people. In his social media account, President Sisi said the bond between the army and people can never be broken. On Monday, the president laid wreaths of flowers at the tombs of late Presidents Gamal Abdel Nasser and Anwar al-Sadat, as well as for the armed forces martyr.
القوات المسلحة المصرية لم تستسلم ولن تستسلم، بل ستصأر، والثأر هو رائدها وهو هدف لها.
إن الواجب يقتضينا أن نسجل من هنا وباسم هذا الشعب وباسم هذه الأمة ثقتنا المطلقة بقواتنا المسلحة، ثقتنا في قيادتها التي خططها، وثقتنا في ضباطها وجنودها.
وأنا بأكد ده تاني، هو جيش شريف، جيش وطني، جيش محب لبلاده، وهيفضل يقدم هذا العطاء لبلاده.
أكتوبر 73 بقاء شعب ونماء أمة.
A very important role also played by translation in connecting nations and in conveying the messages. That's why whenever you need to know more about a place, you could read the translation on different websites. And it is one of the most important communication tools, communicating ideas and communicating also places and countries and more, and culture.
Right, and this is the reason why we say that translation is not just a way of communicating ideas and language, but it goes beyond that degree.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the translation plays a social factor in our society. It does have a significant cultural impact as well. Let me just tell you on the social level, it keeps our identity. It preserves our values, our traditions. You probably might ask me, how? The question is how, and I would tell you that when you just be exposed to different cultures, then you can understand your culture as well, and you can be very aware about your traditions and about your values. So it is connected with the social level when it comes to the values and tradition. When it comes to the cultural background, it opens our minds to different cultures. Believe it or not, translation plays an important role in accepting and containing other cultures and be more tolerant towards differences in the world. And absolutely, there are a lot of differences in every country when it comes to the social level, the cultural level, even the religious concepts. Translation paves the way to be more tolerant, more flexible, more containing for differences. And it helps here in this way when it comes to the tourism factor, because we would like to attract the tourists and we would like also to exchange our ideas. It happens by translation. But let me just go beyond that. Let me just go beyond the social and the cultural aspect. When it comes to scientific progress, we're going to have translation as well. There was a challenge that happened before, I guess that was a few decades ago, when a country, I guess it was Syria, when they decided to make the studying of medicine in Arabic language. Was my deep respect to that, but look to the way when we changed the whole situation today into English. When you just have another language with your first language, it helps in understanding the cultures of the other people. But it also...
Especially that in medicine, the culture is a bit universal concerning the terminology.
So you see here, so here we have translation in the medical field, and it helps in the scientific research. We would like to, we are talking about the progress in education, right? So if you would like to make any progress of education, we're going to talk about that, different pillars. But let me just tell you something very critical, that we would like to increase and upgrade the ranking of our universities. And how can we do that? We wouldn't be able to do that until we have a tool that is very critical, which is represented by translation.
Since we're talking education, and this is a very important file the file of education and digitization. And it was very important to translate not only to the professors, but also to the students and to the parents.
Right.
So here translating ideas.
Right.
The idea or the concept is that we are developing our educational system, and this derives that we would resort to the latest high-tech equipment,
right.
and also to digitization,
right.
while addressing this important file. Translation also plays a role in that respect.
Absolutely right. And this is connected with the whole process, the comprehensive process of developing our universities. Remember that in the last few episodes together, Tagreed, we were talking about how that there is a progress happening on the ground, whether you agree or disagree. Just the other day, I was in a meeting in the college with my colleagues, and they were telling me, Tagreed, look, for any sort of a change that we have in our society, we will have resistance for such a change. But at the
This
end,
is normal.
This is very, very usual.
Very normal.
And at the end, we should complete our task, complete our mission. I was in a discussion with my colleagues about that in the college, that there is a dramatic change happening. And some people were saying, no, we're going to have the pros and cons. We are not familiarized with that.
We cannot go on like, you know, resorting to the
Right.
traditional conventional
That's
means,
right.
and the whole world are taking fast steps
That's right.
towards and making good use of technology,
Right,
and,
right.
and all that.
Right. And we live today in another different world from the past. The world today is different from 10 years ago. I mean, today we are talking about that I am in my office, in my home, in my room, and I'm giving lectures to universities in different countries in the Middle East. That wouldn't happen before in the past.
Yes.
Today, I'm just trying to have a channel on YouTube, and I'm trying to spread the knowledge, and I'm trying to extend my words, not just in the Middle East, but in the US, in Europe, and in different countries. So we're going to have a new mechanism. Now, back again to the topic of translation. I guess that translation is involved in the comprehensive process of education as well. We were talking about developing our universities. We were talking about building civil universities, smart colleges. We were talking about international universities. All of them are involved with a foreign language. We wouldn't be able, if we would like to understand the foreign language, until we have the way of translating that. Today, I face many students, and I meet with many students today, and they are telling me, you know, Dr. Ahmed, we would like to understand what's going on. And I tell them that if you'd like to do that, then you should acquire another foreign language. That will help you to make the process of translation. In other words, it will put you on the right track at the end.
Yes, very important. And Egypt has put priorities in its plans regarding the file of regaining peace and security, and that was very important. That's why we managed to achieve victory, because we were going, in the first place, we wanted to achieve peace and regain back our land, and then embarking on important economic reforms, regaining our pivotal role, not only regionally, but also internationally. So we are continuing today our battle for development,
Right.
for achieving new cities on solid grounds, international cities. You do have here international cities on Egyptian soil, the new international Galala city, new Alamein, the new administrative capital are all examples
Right.
of international cities that are being built in Egypt today under the directives of the president, and definitely are going to change the whole the face of Egypt's map at large.
That's what's happening today. Probably people sometimes may not realize that there is something happening here. But if you just have a deep look at the situation today, as I said, that we are having the physical part. We are talking about the buildings, we are talking about complexes, we are talking about classes, we are talking about international smart universities and the colleges. And I'm telling you, Terry, because I work as a professor here in a university in Egypt, there is a change even happening when it comes to the syllabi. We were talking before about the digitalizing process, and we were talking about that there must be a change when it comes to the syllabi. Today, there are a lot of updating news. We are changing. Just 2 days ago, I was in a meeting on campus in the college. We were talking about that we're going to have not a traditional lecture, but something that goes beyond the traditional way. It is electronic lectures. We're going to have, the wonderful part that we're going to have here is, and this is very exciting to know that, I read that the Minister of Higher Education, I want to give a salute to the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Khalid Al-Ghaffar. I'm a big fan for what he's doing, and I'm a firm believer for what his plans, very, very amazing, very dramatic as a matter of fact. Today we're going to have a platform, international platform, that will contain all Egyptian universities, all the professors, all the students. We will be on one website. Believe it or not, I just read the news that the Ministry of Higher Education, they signed a contract with Microsoft company in the United States. So we're going to have major companies coming in Egypt and being involved in building electronic platform that can help in education. So at the end, surely we will have at the end, we will have something tangibly happening. We will have a progressive movement when it comes to education. We were talking about a comprehensive development. We are talking about changing the syllabi, but there is something also very, very interesting to talk about. It's the infrastructure.
Yes.
We were talking about the buildings, but there is a digitalized infrastructure nowadays. We're going to have internet in every single room, in every single part. And I'm not just saying that from the vacuum. May I'm not be stupid to talk about that. But the interesting part here is we're going to have technological devices that can push the country forward. Something more to add here, Tagreed, which is awareness.
Yes.
Building the awareness. This is the critical part. And if we get back again to our topic, translation, I would say that there is a strong connection between both, between translation, between education, between development.
They are all
awareness.
interconnected, actually.
All of them are interconnected together, and that can help, because at the end we have a target, which is the progress of our society, the development of our community, and making Egypt on the top line.
Definitely. We always wish our country would be on the top line, and from being on the top line as a country to talking about translators who are considered to be on the top line, maybe our viewers would like to know more about what would be the criteria of having an efficient and a professional translator around. Who can we call is doing a good job in this field?
I think it's not a good job, it's an amazing job. It's an amazing job, as a matter of fact. I'm talking with passion to read about translation. I studied translation and interpretation as well, and I worked in that field. I'm still working on a professional level when it comes to translation and interpretation. It is something that goes beyond just a job. It's a passion. People sometimes, you know, among the linguists, they have a very controversial argument about that. They could have a contentious argument, if I would say that, that they are talking about whether it's a job, whether it is an art,
passion,
or whether it's a skill, or what is it? I would say it's a combination of all of that. Translation, it's who we are. And when you talk about language in general, when I was a student, I was studying language, and then I realized how critical it is when you just have the language, when you have the art and the job of translation. You can do whatever you want. You just change the meaning of one word, and probably in this way you can change the whole world. Translation, Tagreed, it's a very, very critical one. I think that in the future we're going to have a lot of progress based on translation.
Definitely, we do have. We are really proud of also of our Arabic language, the language of the Holy Quran, and we're really also very proud of the Arabic calligraphy, and very proud to see also all over the world how it is receptive, you know. So translation is also playing a very important role in that, communicating your language to the world.
Remember, Tagreed, that I was reading in history when it comes to translation, not just in the modern Egyptian history, because we were talking about Tahtawi and the College of Al-Azhar, but let me just go back in history. I was reading during the time of the Abbasid Caliphate, during the time of the Abbasid era. I heard that the Caliph at that time, I guess his name was Al-Ma'mun, so he was just funding every project related to translation. He was paying a lot of money to translators. Believe it or not, when I read that, one of the secret ways and one of the key points when it comes to the progress of the caliphate at that time is because of the translation. Translation, what translators during his era, during Al-Ma'mun, they were actually translating books from the Greek civilization, from the Latin civilization, from even the Chinese civilization.
So see how translation can bring cultures together and people together.
That's absolutely right. And then he was just funding, giving all the financial support. I was astonished when I read that translators during his time were the highest paid figures in the country at that time. So this is something amazing. And they helped at the end to make a good progress for the whole place. In my humble opinion, Thierry, translation can really help in another different way. It can help in a more dynamic way to make people, to change the mindset of the people, to change the ideological background, to make people more accepting to different cultures as well, and to have, at the end, to increase our loyal sense to our country, Egypt.
Yes, very important. And we are always talking about the youth and how we can enrich this sense of belonging to the youth. Today, they are listened to, which is very important. Today, their messages are translated into action. And also, how about translation and special needs? Or Zawi al-Himam? How can it help? In your opinion?
I think translation, again, plays a critical role here when it comes to disabled people or those with the special needs. I think one of the ways that those people that they were having before, the challenge to communicate, the challenge to send a message, the challenge to behave in a very normal way. So translation can really help in that. We have today different applications that can really help as well to communicate in another efficient way. The interesting part that we have here, Tagreed, it is you can just find translation, it just being involved in all aspects in our life today. You were just telling me that there are very, very specific criteria when it comes to translators. Absolutely, yes. And when it comes to interpreters as well, yes. And during the break, we were talking about the two scientific researchers. They were talking about the capabilities of the translators and to what extent they can help. Can you imagine, for example, that when I was making interpretation in international conference, I was responsible for sending a message to more than 3,000 or 4,000 persons in a conference. You see how critical it is when it comes to disabled people and especially needed people. I think translation can change their lifestyle at the end.
Definitely. It is more of a passion, yes. It's not only a profession, but more of a passion and more on working on your skills daily. And mastering, of course, the language, which is very important, so that you could easily find the terms and find it as a strong tool in order to communicate knowledge and also make the message reach the other correctly. We're still talking translation and communication, and how did translation contribute in conveying the message of victory in Egypt, October victory to the whole world. The books that were translated efficiently and professionally in the different languages has managed to achieve a lot in portraying the true image of Egypt and also the great victory that has been achieved. We've been also victorious on more than one front. Milestones has been achieved in the field of development. 6 years during the era of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, giving directives of building new cities, projects, name it, in all the developmental areas, in infrastructure, in the field of establishing new electricity grids, talking also solar power, talking energy and oil, and more that has been achieved on that front. Let's watch this report talking about the more than one achievement that has been established on Egyptian soil, and we'll be back.
مهما كانت التضحية ومهما كانت تكاليف هذه المعركة هندفعها بإذن الله، ولكن لن نسلم في إرادتنا ولا في سنتي من أرضنا ولا الأرض العربية.
المعركة ما انتهتش، المعركة ما زالت موجودة بمفردات مختلفة. كان الأول العدو واضح والخصم واضح، دلوقتي بقى مش واضح، بقى معانا وجوانا. استطاعوا بالفكر إن هم ينشئوا عدو جوانا. يعيش بقتلنا ويتبني بهدمنا.
في عيد النصر تحية من جيل قدم وما زال يقدم أروع الأمثلة في التضحية والفداء، إلى جيل حقق النصر وأعاد لمصر العزة والكبرياء. أكتوبر 73 بقاء شعب ونماء أمة.
Ahead of the 47th anniversary of the 6th of October victory anniversary, the Cabinet has released a milestone volume documenting the achievements implemented by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the government since he came to power 6 years ago. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has clarified that the volume documents and records the most important and top achievements that Egypt has witnessed during the past period in various sectors. The Prime Minister also added that Egypt has made remarkable progress regarding its development plan at all levels, including raising the standard of living for citizens, implementing a serious economic reform program aimed at supporting the role of the private sector in development, stimulating the establishment of small and medium enterprises and entrepreneurship, as well as improving housing services, education, health, transportation, and social protection networks. He pointed out that Egypt has also attached great importance to strengthening international cooperation with international institutions and boosting bilateral cooperation with friendly countries, enabling it to move forward with accelerated steps in the development process. Mr. Madbouli further pointed out that about 14,762 projects were completed since President Sisi's arrival to office, at an estimated cost of about £2,207.3 billion, and about 4,164 projects are being implemented at an estimated cost of £2,569.8 billion, particularly in the infrastructure, energy and agriculture, as well as the construction of the fourth-generation new cities, in order to reduce the pressure on all cities and contribute to providing appropriate housing for all segments of society. The Premier indicated that the state has spent around £180 billion on the development of Sinai over 6 years, including establishing new cities, tunnels and bridges to breathe life into the peninsula, facilitating the transportation of goods and people and providing them with all services, promising a bright future for the 60,000 square kilometre area.
the songs and the soft power during October has played also a very important role, because people are memorizing those beautiful songs, and usually during the month of October we are recalling all those moments of pride and all those songs that are there in our memory.
It's part of our heritage, Tagreed. It's part of our cultural background. And we said before that we wouldn't be able to understand more about our society and different societies around our country unless we read history. So this is a very historic event. And I am a firm believer that we wouldn't be able to understand our community and our society unless we read our history first. For such an event, this is the greatest anniversary that we have in our modern history. It sends a message that Egyptians can do the impossible. People in the past, during that time, they were so much desperate, they were just claiming that Egyptians would never make the crossing of the Suez Canal, but they did. The lesson here, it's the determination. The lesson here, it is how can we stand unified together. The lesson here is how to be persevere and persistent. Let me just finalize what I'm saying today, to read here by something very interesting. I read that from the famous former Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, when he said at that time that we were so much astonished by the timing of the war, by the capability, but the most interesting part is we were astonished by the Egyptian soldier. So I guess that the key word here and the secret word, it is the Egyptian soldiers. Let me just finally give them a big salute. They were actually the main and the genuine players when it comes to any victory in our modern history.
May God bless our army, and they will always be victorious. I thank you so much, Professor Dr. Ahmad Abdel Tawwab, Professor of Linguistics. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, on this debate, we talked translation and how it managed to convey as a strong communication tool the spirit of victory to the other. Many thanks for watching. I'm Tagreed Hussein, and I thank you all for being with us.